Hey pilots! DrainMan here, and today I've got a very special video. In today's video, we are going to be covering the wonderful world of LEDs. This is going to be your one-stop shop ultimate guide to LEDs. Let's go! So LEDs, they come in all shapes, sizes, colors, dimensions, voltage. LEDs is a very large world to dive in. There are different types of LEDs, and these different types of LEDs all have different applications, and they all can be powered differently. So it all depends on what you have and what it needs and what it was designed for. So the very first thing is to decide what is it that you want to do with your LEDs. And then the next thing to decide is how do you want to power them, how much power do they need, and then how do you want to run them. There are all different ways to power your quad and make it a beautiful lit up RGB quad. Now what is RGB, you might ask? Well, RGB stands for red, green, blue. And what that means is that you can make millions of different colors by using those three simple colors. R, G, and B. And this is known as the HSV. And what that is that is taking a certain scale of red and then a certain scale of blue and a different scale of green. And you mix a little bit of each depending on what color you're looking for. So you could have 10 red, 80 blue, and 10 green, and this will give you a certain color. And there are so many combinations that there are literally millions of different combinations of colors that you can make with a true RGB LED. So this stuff is truly powerful. It is absolutely exciting and fun. But first, before you get into it, you need to know a little bit more about it. What is an LED? Okay, an LED stands for light emitting diode, and all it is a cousin of the diode family. So that means that LEDs do have polarity. Light emitting diodes, or LEDs, are actually suicidal. Ooh, if that didn't blow your mind, what that means is if I take this LED and I wire it up and I give it 5 volts with unlimited current, it is literally going to blast itself to death. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a little bit about how LEDs work. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this LED here, and as you'll notice, I've got a longer pin and a shorter pin. The longer pin is called an anode, and the littler pin is called a cathode. And all that is negative and positive. So what I've got here is a little breadboard, and I'm going to take this red LED right here, and I'm going to stick it on line 17 and 16. I'm not sure if you can see that. Now I want to go ahead and power this LED, but before I do, there's a couple things I need to do. I need to make sure that I'm giving it the proper voltage. Now if I stick this in and I go red to positive and I go blue to negative, this thing is just going to go poof, okay? And the reason why is because this thing is suicidal. It's like a dentist or a toll booth worker. You can't trust these guys alone. They'll hang themselves. So what we've got to do is we've got to apply what is called a resistor, and that is this little guy right here. Now, unlike an LED or a regular diode, resistors do not have polarity, so there is no negative and there is no positive. So that's really cool. We can just stick this in however. Now granted, you're probably not going to use this while flying a drone, but I don't know, you might want to add some LEDs to your drone and you might want to understand what you're doing. So I'm trying to help you out here. Just hang in there. So what you need to do is you need to know what you got. Now this little red LED right here is actually a 2 to 2.2 volt LED. That means it can take anywhere from 2 volts to 2.2 volts. Let's not get complicated. We're just going to keep it at 2 volts. The next thing you need to know is that my power supply is running 5 volts. Now most flight controllers like this one here and the one that I'm about to show you on, those will put out 5 volts to your LED. So we're going to go ahead and just for argument's sake, we're going to give this LED 5 volts, okay? So when we power this with 5 volts and it can only take 2 to 2.2 volts, we're going to blow it right up. And the next thing is how much current can it handle? So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a little equation, which is pretty cool to know how to do. And what you're going to do is you're going to take the total amount of voltage that you're putting in, which is 5 volts. We're going to minus the 2 volts that it can actually handle, and then we are going to divide that by the amount of current that this little guy wants. And what this guy wants is 20 milliamps. So I'm going to enter that by hitting decimal 020. That is 20 milliamps on a decimal scale. And when I press equals, you'll find that we need to give this thing a 150 ohm resistor. Now, I don't know that I actually have one. I'm going to test this one real quick. Let's see what this one is. Now, if you don't know how to test a resistor, you can buy yourself a little doohickey like this. This is just a multi-function tester deal. So if I pop this resistor in and I lock it down and I test it, it's going to tell me how many ohms is this resistor. And as you'll see, this resistor is 82 ohms. Now, let's say you didn't have this available. You could just use a regular multimeter. All you'll do is you'll throw it into the ohms section, which is the little horseshoe dealio. You'll take this off, and then you just take a negative and a positive, and sure enough, it's also reading 82 ohms. So this is an 82 ohm resistor. So we needed a 150 ohms. So this is definitely not strong enough, but there is a plus and minus on everything. So our LED is just going to be very, very bright. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my positive lead, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stick it on the positive line, which is the longer one. Okay, that is our anode. And I've just supplied it now with 5 volts. Then I'm going to take my resistor, which is 82 ohms, which we really need for this LED to run most efficiently. We need 150. But now when I go ahead and I give it ground and complete the circuit, you'll see the LED power up. And there you go. Look at that. That guy is bright as all get out. That is a beautiful bright LED. So whether you know it or not, paid attention to what I just said or not, all of these LEDs have resistors on them. So what I just showed you was a through-hole component. This right here is an SMD resistor. Here is another one, and you'll notice right here you've got 2 little resistors because you've got 2 rows of LEDs. How cool is that? So if you didn't know that, now you know. You learned a little something. So these are a specific color. Both of these LEDs are a color, and that color does not change. You cannot change it, and you won't change it because, well, you can't. So this is just a regular LED that you would just power it with voltage and ground, and you would mount it with the little sticky on the back anywhere you want on your quadcopter. As soon as you power up, it's going to be on, and it's going to be on all the time, and there's nothing you can do about that. Another option of LEDs is something like this, and you might know these as LED race wire. This LED right here accepts voltage, and that is it. Depending on the amount of volts coming from your ESC through these wires, through this and into your motor, is how bright this is going to be. And it's set up so when you start going low throttle, they're a little bit bright. And when you go full throttle and tons of voltage is just pumping through here, these LEDs are super, super bright. So now, of course, everybody wants to know about the really, really awesome LEDs. And that is these guys right here. Now, these LEDs do not just power on because they don't have a color. They're not told a certain color. It's an RGB, and it only knows the color that you tell it through programming. So you need to program this LED. You'll see here that there's 4 pins, and these pins are laid out as ground, 5 volt, DI, and DO. So that is ground, 5 volts, data in, data out. Now, if you were just going to wire this up and enjoy it and use it, you would just connect your ground, your 5 volts, and your DI, which is your data in, which would be the actual signal coming to this LED. Now, if you decided you wanted to connect another one, you would run a wire out of that DO, the data out, and you would send that over to the next LED, and this LED would tell that LED, hey, yo, we're supposed to be turned on right now. You need to be blue. The other scenario you have is where it's just all fancy schmancy built into the flight controller, and that's what this is right here. You literally have your flight controller has a ground, a positive, and a signal coming right out the side, all in a fancy plug. I don't even think they give you LED breakout. So what that means is if these pads were to get ripped off, these connectors, you'd be SOL because you'd have no way to connect these LEDs. Now there's different ways to do this because you have awesome, awesome LEDs, which are ones like this here. And how this works is the exact same way that this works, except on the back end, you actually have another plug. So you can choose to connect one on each side, just like it is here. Because see, this just unplugs, just like this. And now this can plug in, which is super convenient. Now on the back of this, they've given you a little bit more than they did on here. On the back of here, you've got nothing. So what you get is what you got. And on this one, if you wanted to, you could flip it over and you can actually use the solder pads and just solder them up and hardwire them. But more than likely, you're going to use the plug and play. Now, how this works is, so I have one on each arm. So if I go into Betaflight, I'm going to show you how to set that up. So when we go into Betaflight and you set up these LEDs, they're going to turn on all together. So if you set one, it's going to be one all the way around, and two all the way around. So now if I take this and I actually plug this LED in here, and this has a nickname, and this is called doing a daisy chain. If I do that, now these are now in series, and what that means is this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it continues 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 like that, rather than these being in parallel where the first LED is the first LED and the second is the second. They're not like that. They're actually in a chain like that. So let's dive into the PC. All right, pilots, so now that you got your Betaflight open, go ahead and plug in your quadcopter to the PC. And once she starts up and opens, you are going to need to enable expert mode if you have any interest in programming your LEDs. Now, after you check enable expert mode, if you look over here to the left side, you might realize that in your tabs, you don't have an LED strip panel. And if you don't have an LED strip tab, do not freak out. I want you to go ahead and head over to configuration, and then you're going to scroll down a little bit, and right here it says LED strip, multicolor RGB LED strip support. I want you to check that box and then hit save and reboot. Now once that does that, you will now have the opportunity and the option to click on LED strip, and then you can begin to work on your LEDs. Now, before we jump into that, there's one more piece of this puzzle you need to know. So what I've done is I've got my USB connected to my flight controller. I've got a mini little power supply that I've connected here so I can power this at my will. And what I want to do is I want to explain to you one last thing. So this flight controller has on it, it has a 5-volt BEC, and that's what allows this to get powered. Now you need to check the specs of your flight controller. Now, if you're gonna just throw one LED on, I mean, don't worry about it. But if you're gonna daisy chain a ton of LEDs on here like this, then you do need to check this. You need to find out how much power can that BEC handle. Now, the BEC on this one can handle 2 amps. Now 2 amps is a lot when you're talking about power with this small stuff that we deal with, unless you're dealing with motors and ESCs and things like that. If you are an FPV drone pilot, you better damn sure have a multimeter in your toolbox, because without that, you're not going to get very far. So I'm not going to power up the LEDs just yet. I'm going to go ahead and just use the flight controller, and let's find out how much current is this flight controller pulling, and also at the same time I can show you how to test something like that. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab your multimeter, and you know, every meter is different, but if yours is similar to mine, you're going to have a function like this that says amperage, which is much different than all the different functions over here. So I'm going to pull this red out, and I'm going to stick it in the amps section. Boom. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this right here where it says 10A. I'm going to turn that to the amps, and there you go. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect my positive right here, and I'm going to set that aside. So now using my finger, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hold this down, and I'm going to use my black lead, and I'm going to go ahead and touch the negative side. And as you can see by looking at my multimeter, I am pulling 50 milliamps. So by using that, you can add that together. If you were to do that same test and do it on, for example, 4 of your LEDs, or you know, maybe not, I wouldn't do it on all of your LEDs at once, because if it's too much, you're going to smoke the flight controller trying to test it. So maybe do half, see what it is, times it by 2, and if you're nowhere near the 2 amps that your flight controller is rated, then you know that you're safe and just go ahead and get on with your party. Alright, so now that you know how to test and find out how much current you're pulling, you know as to whether what you're connecting to your flight controller is safe or not. That way I'm not misleading you guys and just letting you connect as much as you want and causing yourself to smoke your flight controller. I'd rather show you than not show you. Alright, so what we need to do now is we need to jump back into Betaflight. Alright pilots, so diving back into the PC, come over here on your left side and click LED strip. Now this right here is the LED tab of Betaflight. If you've ever seen it before, it might be a little bit confusing. It definitely appears to be confusing, but don't get discouraged. It's very, very simple, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Now you've got a full number of 32. That is all you get to use. What you need to do is you need to count how many LEDs you have. So if we jump back over here, you can see that I'm running in a daisy chain. I'm running 4, 8, 12, 16. I have 16 RGB LEDs. So let me show you how to lay these out on the board. Now you've got this huge grid panel here, and you can use this however you want. You can literally lay some over here on the left, some on the right, some on the bottom. You can put them all across the top, all across the middle. It does not matter. Betaflight does not know the difference as to exactly what you're doing. So now one thing you need to know, that if you do not number these LEDs, so if I go like this, they mean nothing to Betaflight until I number them. So what I've got to do is I've got to click wire ordering mode. Boom. So now that I've clicked that, I can lay out my LEDs. So I'm going to cut all the way across, and as you'll see, there is my 16. 0 through 15, like we talked about, 0 counts as 1. So now what we want to do for a simple test, I want to show you guys very, very simple. What we're going to do is we're going to take all 16 of them, we are going to change them to color, and then we are going to pick a color, and the color that we're going to pick, just for testing purposes, we'll do this magenta color. Now after I've done that, I'll go ahead and I'll hit save, and then technically you're good to take off and go fly. But I'm going to go ahead and power up and show you guys what this looks like. There you go. So now we've got 16 LEDs all rocking magenta, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So now let's play around with this a little bit so that way you guys can get an idea of how this works. So now out of these, I'm going to go ahead and take half of them, and I'm going to select them just like that. You don't click one at a time. If you click one at a time, it's going to keep switching with you. So you can't say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, because you see each time I click, it's changing with me. Because you might say, well, I want to change every other one, but I don't want to do them one at a time. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to click on the first one, and then on your keyboard, hold down Control, and then you can select different ones like this. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to do every other one just like that. And we're going to do magenta, and we're going to do blue. Ooh. And then what I'll do is I'll hit save, and now you're going to get to see, let's see. Oh my gosh, that's actually gorgeous looking. Let me see if I kill this light, if it'll help at all. Wow, look at that, huh? Tell me that's not beautiful. And now I'm going to show you that this can do tons and tons of stuff. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to select them all by clicking and dragging. And then what we'll do is we'll leave it on color, and we will do the Larson scanner. But we're going to have our colors blue, magenta, blue, magenta, blue, magenta. And then right here in the middle, I'm going to take these 3 and I want to make them green. All right, now let's hit save and let's see what happens. Look at that. Tell me that's not cool. It's doing the Larson scanner, which is our little like scan through deal. And when it gets to the middle, it's green like we set it to. And then it goes back to the blue and magenta like we set it to. It's really very, very simple. And let's go ahead and click clear all wiring, clear all. And we'll start with a fresh canvas. This can get truly, truly awesome if you wanted to. So let's go ahead and just lay them all out. So now what you're going to do is you can change your function over past color, skip color. You can go into modes and orientations. You can go into your arm state. Now watch this. If I go into arm state, I can literally make it where when I'm disarmed, it's nice and green, and when I'm armed, it's red. There you go. Very simple. They will all follow that guide, and that is super awesome. Something else we can do is we can change it to battery level. Wow, battery level. Now look at this. With the battery level, we can select these, and we can make our battery change colors based on where our battery's at. So if our battery is fully charged, it will be green. And if our battery is fully dead, it will be red. How cool is that? Let's go ahead and say we set up RSSI. So I set that. When my RSSI is fantastic and I'm flowing and flying like a beast, I'm going to be at green. And when my RSSI sucks and I'm about to fall out of the sky, I'm going to make it red. You can also do warnings. You can set up all of your warnings. You can send up indicators. You can do all kind of stuff. Now watch this. We can take 0, 1, 2, and 3, and we can indicate that when the quad is leaning to the west, those are going to turn green. And when the quad, okay, and when the quad is leaning, oops, did I select them? Yep. And when the quad is going upwards, it is going to be red. And when the quad is leaning to the right, which is the east, it is going to be blue. Guys, this is so freaking cool. And then I can add a little buffer to it all and make them all just blink all the time. Why not? Let's just have them blinking the whole freaking time. Dude, this is sick. So there is just so much you can do, and it's really awesome. It's all a matter of how creative you want to get and how much you want to do. Now, if you decide to set something up and you want to have it on a switch, you need to set it to a switch, for example, aux 1. And then when you set up your modes tab, that's going to correspond with that. So when you flick aux 1 on your radio, those LEDs will come on in the color that you tell them. So for example, wire ordering mode, all 16. We are going to have them be a color when I turn aux 1, and they'll be a Larson scanner. And I want to do these two in blue and these two in purple. There you go. So, and then you would just hit save, and it's literally that simple. Now, keep in mind, if you're going to run an aux, you need to checkbox this. If you don't check this, that auxiliary is not going to work. You can even set this to your VCX. So depending on the frequency that you're on, or depending on the channel that you're on your VTX, that'll be the color that your LEDs will turn, and you can set those up yourself by playing around right inside of here. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and light them all up. I make sure that wire ordering mode is on. And then I'm going to change them all. Now, if I go like this first and I change these to color, because guys, you can set these to do different stuff. You can have the first 3 do color, the next 8 will do modes and orientation, the next 3 is going to go ahead and do my arming, and the last 3 that I have down set in the back side of the quad, those are going to go ahead and be my battery. You don't have to use all your LEDs for one thing. You can wire a set of 4 just like I have, and you can put these guys down here in the bottom of your quad, and you can set just these 4 to do your battery. And when your battery is low, it'll be green, and when your battery is high, it will be a different color. Guys, you guys can set these up to be whatever you want. Alright pilots, look at that funky cool rainbow I got. Or any of these inputs just aren't working for you, it's because you don't have this checked. So make sure you have that checked, and when you do check it, you'll get a little indicator that lets you know that you got it checked. So let's go ahead and hit save. We're going to go ahead and power this guy up. And look at that. Look at that funky rainbow. So as you see here, I've got a little bit of every color running, from green to blues, all of them, oranges and reds, to even having one of them turned off and one of them white up here in the front. Guys, this is so cool. This is so much fun. LEDs really do change the world. I've had tons of pilots asking me about this, so I wanted to take the time, make a quick little video, show you guys a little bit on how to do it. As always, if you have any questions, drop them for me down in the comments, and I'll do my best to help you guys out. I hope that you guys learned something today, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you on the next one.